Good morning. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Michiko, and thank you for having me invited to participate to this project, which I think is quite impressive. And I talk about a little bit of work and my relationship with Maurizio Cattelan. There are two kinds of curators, the stupid one like me and the smart one like Sam. The stupid one like me start to work early on with an artist and get always the worst work. And the smart ones, they are at the end, you know. And like Sam. For me, this is almost an anniversary, 20 years of my working with Maurizio. Because around, I think, this time, in June 1993, I invite Maurizio to be part of a little section of that part of the Biennale in 1993 that was called Aperto. Actually, it was a section invented in 1985, I think, by Harald Zeman, and was dedicated to younger artists. In 1993, I was invited among many other curators to curate the Arsenale, and I curated a small section called the Mere Interchange. And Maurizio was one of the artists in the show. And of course, he didn't give me his best work, but he sold the space that I gave it to him to an advertising company, and who put a kind of sample of a perfume, and the title of that not work, all the known work of Maurizio, eventually they became works, was called Il lavoro è un brutto mestiere, or Lavorare è un brutto mestiere, I never remember the title. The work is an ugly job. And so he presented this thing to the thing, and at the time already I say that's really stupid things. But this is interesting because I still remember in Venice a famous and influential art consultant of the 90s passing by under the Maurizio Cattelan things, asking what it was, and I explained it to her, and she told me, oh, what a stupid idea, already done many times. I think that this art consultant now changes her mind about it, and will look in a different way. This I talk about like how time changed perspective on artists and perception. Maurizio obviously doesn't have much sympathy for horses because he always treated them fairly in an unpleasant way. He likes more donkeys. In fact, his first use of an animal was in 1994, a live donkey in New York at the Daniel Newberg Gallery in New York, in Wooster Street, I think, in Soho. And he presented a live donkey and a chandelier, and a very long title, I don't even remember. Don't feed, don't touch, don't take pictures, something like that. And I still remember then, when people come to the show, nobody notices it. People dismiss it and say, okay, Yanis Kounellis already did it with horses in 1969, so what's new with that? The show lasted very little because the donkey was praying in the gallery, so the neighborhood complained at night, so the donkey was exiled into in the countryside upstate New York, where I think he still lives there, he's still alive, so someone told me. So that was the use of Maurizio animal. And then obviously he started to change idea. He thought that maybe live animals were not such an appealing object for the art and collector, and he started using horses. If the first horse he used was a Trotsky ballad in the Gallery Massimo De Carlo, I don't remember the year, in Milano. Then he used the most famous one, was the Novecento, taking the title from Bernardo Bertolucci's famous movie, and now is a famous horse with elongated legs that is hanging now in the collection of the Castello di Rivoli in Torino. Then he took, I think, the other horse, Inri, is a horse laying down on the ground where he stuck a pole into the stomach, and he put the famous sign that is over the cross of Jesus. So also there, that's maybe the most violent act that he did. And then finally this Untitled that he did like this inside the wall. Horses are very heroic subjects, and they come from, art history is full of horses, literature is full of horses, and the title comes from this famous book by Curzio Malaparte, an Italian writer, Caput. It's this kind of fantasy documentation chronicle of World War II, of him as a captain of the Italian army traveling across Europe. And there is a chapter in the book that is devoted to horses, different kind of horses. And particularly disturbing is this story of him going on the Finnish lake, Lagoda, I think, and at the end of the winter, beginning of the spring, and the lake, according to him, because you never know in Malaparte if what he writes is true or just a fantasy or an elaboration, an exaggeration of reality. And is that in the lake of Lagoda, apparently the horses of Russian army were pushed out of a wood in the winter in fire, and to find respite, they jump into the lake, frozen lake, and they got trapped into the ice of the lake. And they stay alive for a while until they die, and then they become frozen, and then the soldier used them as seats to sit on. So Malaparte goes in the spring, and in spring, the lakes start to melt, and the horses start to putrefy, and beautiful vision, and smell very bad, and then he described this in a very poetic way. So I thought about, in the little text, I thought about this, and the title also, Caput. Maurizio kind of reversed the thing. These are the bodies of horses that maybe are underwater or stuck in the ice or something like that, and we wait for the spring to come and the ice to melt, and maybe the poor horses will be freed. And he kind of reversed the trophy, Usually the trophy is the head of the animal sticking out of the wall. And the body is eaten. In this case, it's the head that has been cut out. There is also kind of some mafia reference. I think there is in The Godfather the famous scene when the guy finds the head of the horses. So maybe Maurizio has 5 enemies to whom Maurizio has many more enemies. He needs more horses to revenge on them and send the head of the horse to their enemies in bed. In the little text, I make many reference to many few artists that use horses in a heroic way, but also I think this is quite heroic, with the way Maurizio presented. He presented, he thought about. Maurizio is very smart. He always keep himself exit road outside his decision and his work. Artists can retire in 2 ways: killing themselves, which is unreversible, I think, or doing like Maurizio, to say that you retired, but then retirement. My father retired once. In Italy, usually people retire and then they find immediately another job. And I think that's what they did Maurizio, because they retired and they found another job, and he started thinking about his work in a different way. He doesn't need. He's very coherent. At the same time, he's retired because he didn't produce any new work, but he can reassemble his work in a different way that appears very new. So that's quite interesting to see. And also, I think people will say, "Oh, it was one. What an idea to put 5." But think about Fontana. Fontana did a slash, and then he did it many different variation of the slash. He did I'm sure he did a canvas with 5 slash, 2 slash, 3 slash, and so on. So I mean, you have an idea, and I think it's legitimate to expand it and reformat it and represent it in another way. And I think this is a fantastic way to present really a work that has, when you see it by itself, has an impact, but when you see it in 5, has a completely different meaning. It's not just a horse, it's something that's much more aggressive, much more violent, much more, there is there is an energy that is completely different from one. And of course here there is a big reference with Cunelli's horses at the Galleria Lattico in 1969, live horses. And I think that in a way is not to make a polemic with arte povera artists or something like that, but I think in a way this work is more alive than reacting a Cunelli's performance he did it sometime, you know, they put horses in a live space, but that's not the same, it's more that, because the time and the moment is completely lost. In this way, the time and the moment is expanded, is reinforced, is make it really powerful. And Maurizio is very good at that. Of course, you wonder what he will do next. You know, what kind of trick he will pull out of his head to keep working without working, and which is very much in line with the first work he presented in Venice Biennale, where he said working is a bad job. You know, and he expanded this idea of working and not working. Maurizio is a great worker, he works all the time, but at the same time he finds a way to make it appear effortlessly. When we discussed the show at the Beyeler, I mean, there were many options, you know, but Maurizio always, I think, is at his best when he does one-shot deal, you know. At the Guggenheim he did this very spectacular thing. Personally, I don't think it was his best work, his best exhibition. I prefer this one because it's more direct, more to the point. But of course, at the Guggenheim, I always say, talking with Maurizio, say, you know, in a football match, you know, there is sometimes a player shoot the ball and hit another player, and that goes into the goal, and the final is won, and the final was won. I have no doubt that Maurizio, with the show at the Guggenheim, won his final. But I think he won it with a little bit of luck, you know, and not the best. But so no discussion that it was a spectacular show, had many visitors, and that's what counts today. But this is, I think, is a more reflective, more deep work, and I think it works the best. He had many different ideas for Sam here, but then I think he come out to the most simple, natural light, very straightforward presentation of one work that became another work and can be read in many different ways. I don't have much more to say about it. Maybe you have questions and I can try to answer if, if I have an answer. I think that the combination from Marx Ernst to the de Kooning and here is a fantastic dialogue. You come from high density to this thing and then to kind of those works that, I don't know, I'm not an expert on de Kooning, but a kind of latish de Kooning, which shows again how can you reinvent yourself along your career in different ways and different methods. So, thank you, Sam, and please, if you have a question, I will be happy to try to answer. No question? Good. I'm here if you come up with a question. Oh, yes. Oh. Where is Maurizio? But Maurizio, I always say, people always ask me, oh, bring Maurizio to a conversation, bring Maurizio. I know him very well. Maurizio can be very boring, you know, in front of a lot of public. You know, one-to-one is a fantastic person. When there's a lot of public, he kind of very shy, feels very self-aware, and it's not particularly interesting to see. He doesn't answer to questions. He doesn't know what to answer. So I don't know where it is now. Maybe it will come here later on in Basel for the exhibition, so it will be around. But you know, it's you know, people always have this in the visual arts. People have always this obsession with having the artist. But I think about the famous Salinger or Solbello or even more extreme Thomas Pynchon, those American writers that disappeared and they produce only the work, and nobody really make a fuss about them not presenting the book or something like that. But in our world, we need the physical presence of the artist. I don't know why, because we always want to see something, and we feel always very outraged when the artist is present to the opening or to the exhibition. We find it almost unrespectful. But many others feel in the arts, artists don't appear, don't want to appear, you know. They give very little interviews and they don't do any talks or lecture or something like that. So I think we should give the freedom to an artist also to present the work and not being part of the work. Of course, I understand. Maurizio become kind of like Roberto Benigni character, so people want to see him just physically, you know, because he acts like sometimes like a clown, so people want to see him. But I mean, it's his prerogative to ask, like any artist, to just don't be this thing and send someone to talk about the work.